We are live here on OC Rock Radio. My name is Nick Neenan.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And today we have a fantastic show for you today. So much NBA talk. Magic Johnson has essentially called out the Lakers organization earlier this week. We're going to discuss that a little bit later. We're going to dive into the NBA playoffs in a second. We also have the Stanley Cup Finals to predict and some NFL news, some rare NFL news here in the month of May.
Before we get started,
yes,
I'm just going to move this a little bit because we got to get Nick's precious face
of course.
in the screen.
No, yes,
I'm not trying to block him out.
Right now, the Facebook Live was just needing to be adjusted a little bit, but yes.
So there we go. Nick's back in the
now
picture.
Now we're perfect, yeah.
Trying to give you a full view.
Exactly. But nonetheless, we're going to start today's podcast with the NBA playoffs, the conference finals, as you will. We only have one remaining here on this Wednesday, and that is the Bucks and Raptors, and that is due to the fact that the Golden State Warriors, for the 5th consecutive year, are going to the NBA Finals. We are going to discuss what that means for the NBA, what that means for the Portland Trail Blazers, and what that means for these Eastern Conference teams. We now are going to jump into. So last night, Tuesday night, the Raptors and Bucks played Game 4 in Toronto, and Toronto tied up the series with a pretty convincing victory over Milwaukee. I know that when we first saw this series, we both thought that it would be competitive, and that's exactly what it's been. But it seems like, essentially who's been the home team so far has won, and that is exactly what has happened. The Bucks won Game 1 and Game 2 in Milwaukee. Toronto won Game 3 and Game 4 in Toronto. So, Jared, we now have a 3-game series. What happens from here, and what have you seen so far in this series?
I'm shocked and stunned at the fact that the Bucks have not been able to get that killer instinct mentality of saying, all right, we took the first 2 games at home, and while the Raptors played good at moments, they never were able to put a full game together, right? In the first 2 games in Milwaukee. And really, Giannis was able to do what he wanted to do. Chris Middleton was shooting the ball well. Brogdon was shooting the ball well. The Bucks just looked like a well-oiled machine from an offensive standpoint and defensively, actually. And then the tables turn when we go to Toronto for games 3 and 4. Game 3 obviously goes into overtime. And the Bucks, in my opinion, actually got very lucky to even be in that game because in the first half, they were nowhere to be found. I'm pretty sure Giannis got a good talking to by their coach at halftime because he was not playing to that superstar level that you would expect from him, especially in the playoffs, right? So he came out in the second half and basically said, give me the ball, get out of the way, led the team back from a huge deficit and got them into overtime. Unfortunately for the Bucks, Kawhi Leonard and the Raptors were able to take advantage of that and get a win. And then this game last night, I'm like, all right, you know what? The Bucks lost, but it was close. It's not like they got blown out. They're still up 2-1. If they win this Game 4, they can go home for Game 5 and close it out, right? Knowing that, like Nick just mentioned, the Warriors are sitting at home and will be getting plenty of rest because they just swept the Blazers. Mm-hmm. What happens? The Bucks come out, and I don't want to say they got, demolished, but from the parts of the game that I watched, the Bucks just looked unorganized. They didn't look like they even wanted to be there. I'm sorry. I mean, they got, other than the first quarter, when they only trailed by 1, they got outscored by at least 6 points in every quarter. And it just didn't seem like like I said, they had that want or they had that kind of killer mentality to say, hey, let's close it out, or not close it out, but let's get this win on the road and then close it out at home. Yeah. So I'm just surprised more at the Bucks for not taking advantage of that opportunity. But hey, you have to give credit to the Raptors and especially Kawhi for coming back and tying up the series. And now, I had the Bucks winning this in I believe 5 or 6. I'm not so confident anymore.
Oh wow! So you're not confident in Milwaukee anymore, even though they dominated.
Not after these last 2 games. I mean, listen. So far, all the home teams have won. The Bucks won the first 2 at home, and then the Raptors obviously won the last 2 at home. So, technically we should see the Bucks come back at home and win Game 5, but the Raptors have the momentum right now. And if you're the Bucks, coming out flat in both of these road games, yeah, I'm going to question them and say, where's your guys' heart? Like, it's one thing to just play at home, but you got to play on the road too. That is the mark of a champion. You saw the Warriors do it with 3 of their starters out, and they still won 2 road games.
Yeah.
Okay? So for the Bucks, it's like, all right, it's time to wake up and learn how to win on the road.
Yeah, no, I mean, both these teams need to figure that out real quick, or this series is going to be predictable, and Milwaukee will just win it in 7. But the interesting fact I've seen in this series is you've seen the Stars come out and have good games, and you've also seen the Stars come out and not have good games. And I think with what this series is showing is that the benches for these two teams are extremely important. Last night, the Raptors bench really played well, and a lot of people had called them out in this series prior to this Game 4 for how bad the Raptors bench had actually played. Guys like Serge Ibaka weren't showing up. Van Vliet hadn't had good games, and other players on this bench were not doing enough to help their team win. And then last night, they have a very good game off the bench. You have Norman Powell, 18 points off the bench. Serge Ibaka, 17 points. Fred Van Vliet, 13 points off the bench, combined with 3 other starters getting double digits. That's fantastic. If you have a game like that, they'll win the series easy. The problem is they didn't do that in any other game. So, for me, I just see as both teams have had great home games. They've had great home field advantages. And essentially, when the Stars have fallen off, if the bench produces, that team wins. If the bench doesn't produce, the other team wins. So I see this more of being a bench series where if one team's bench is bad, then the other team will win. Like I just mentioned, I don't want to go over the same thing again. And then you look at even Game 2, Milwaukee's bench. You had 4, or excuse me, let me get to Milwaukee's. I was looking at the Raptors bench, and I was like, those stats aren't very good. So in Game 2, Ersan Ilyasova, 17 points. George Hill, 13 points. Malcolm Brogdon, 14 points off the bench. 3 starters in double digits for Milwaukee. The exact same thing happened in Game 2 in Milwaukee. And then if you look at the Game 2 in Toronto, the same thing happened. So I think it's been kind of a feeling out process so far in this series. I thought this series would be good. I was disappointed that Toronto went down 0-2. But when they won Game 3, I had a feeling they were going to win Game 4, just by the way this series had gone. So I'm going to stick with Milwaukee in 6. I've been predicting it. I've told a lot of people this. And I'm going to stick by it because I kind of expected this exact thing to happen once Toronto won Game 3. If they hadn't won Game 3, it was probably going to be a sweep, at least in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to stick with Milwaukee. I see them, in my opinion, winning at home tomorrow on Thursday. And then having enough momentum to win it in Toronto because I think Kawhi Leonard's banged up. And I don't believe this Toronto bench will show up like they did again in this series because I think Milwaukee's roster is overall better. So I will say this, though. I don't want to take too much of your time. I will say this. The winner of Game 5, I truly believe will win Game 6 as well. Okay. So I don't believe this series is going 7. I think whoever wins Game 5 will have enough momentum to win Game 6. Toronto will have the momentum at home to win, and I think Milwaukee, coming back from losing 2 straight, will also have enough momentum. And as well as if Toronto wins Game 5, that would be 3 wins in a row as well in this series. So I'll just say that I'm going to stick with Milwaukee, but I do believe that if Milwaukee does lose, they aren't going to win this series, and this series will end in 6. There will not be a 7th game in this series.
Yeah. You brought up good points, especially talking about the benches and the fact in Game 2, Milwaukee's bench, you get 3 players in double figures, and then in Game 4 in Toronto, same thing. Toronto gets 3 players off their bench in double figures. Basically, that's the reason why those teams won in those individual games. And I think those are great points. I'm actually going to take it in a different direction, though, and I'm going to go to the Stars. And I think the stars on each team are clearly Giannis for the Bucks, and for Toronto, it's Kawhi Leonard. I think it is really on those guys' shoulders to come out and dominate and lead their teams, and I think it will be because of those players one of those two, why their team wins. So I get that the bench for both of these teams is very important, and even for the Bucks, I agree with you that I think the Bucks have a better, well-rounded team as far as starting lineup and players coming off the bench. For Toronto, I think they do lean on Kawhi a little bit more than you probably should at this point in the season. But I'm actually going to put the onus, like I said, on these stars. And I think it's time for these stars to really show up. I think Kawhi has actually shown up in these playoffs more than Giannis. Kawhi, not only is he a great offensive player, he can shoot from anywhere on the court. He can create his own shot as well as getting his teammates involved. But then on the defensive side of the ball, you see him guarding Giannis at some points in the game, right? Like you mentioned, Kawhi is also banged up. So he's got some injuries going on. He's not 100%. He's having to be the focal point man on offense. And then on defense, you have to go down and guard arguably one of the toughest players in the league to guard, right? And he's doing all of that. So I think Kawhi is the main reason why this Bucks team has been able to come back and win. I mean, literally on the bench, the coach asked him, hey, do you need a breather? And he's like, no, man, I got to go.
Yeah.
And like, there's no time to rest right now, especially being
That's the
down
way it
should
It
is. And I'm not taking anything away from Giannis, and I'm not saying that Giannis wouldn't do the same thing. But for Giannis, I think he needs to take this team on his back and say, I know I have good role players around me. I'm the star of this team. I need to go out, and whether you need to drop 40 or whether you need to go out and get like 15 or 20 assists, Giannis needs to be the reason why this team wins. Like, show us why you are the superstar, right? Show us why we think you are, the leading MVP candidate like most people think you are. So I think I'm going to put the onus on these two stars, Kawhi and Giannis, and whichever of these two has better games the rest of the series, I think will win.
Yeah.
I actually agree with you that I think whoever wins Game 5 will win Game 6. And if we are sticking to our guns, I would say Milwaukee, seeing that we're going back to Milwaukee for Game 5. But it's time for these stars to really step up. This is when, legends are really made. And I know that's kind of cliche to say, but it is true. You can do whatever you want in the regular season, but in the playoffs, when it counts most, that's what people are going to remember you by.
Especially this year, considering that there's no LeBron anymore in the East, and that we are going to get a new opponent no matter what for the Warriors. The Cleveland Cavaliers were one of the 3 worst teams in the league last year. The previous 4 years, they'd been in the NBA Finals. This is simple. If you follow basketball, I shouldn't have to say that. But and you know what's funny is I don't necessarily like us agreeing on everything in this thing, but I actually agree with you as well on this star point, but I'm going to point the finger directly at Giannis. Because I think Kawhi has done everything possible to try to make this series 2-2, and I think he just doesn't have as much help as Giannis does. So I think Kawhi just needs to keep doing what he's doing. And we know he is hurt right now, too. He's playing with some sort of injury to his lower body, and it's going to hamper him in some ways. It might not... it might allow him to still score 30 points, but there will be some ways where Kawhi will not be able to be the same star player that he is because of this injury. And he's still been scoring 30, 20 points every single game. My problem is with Giannis, and Giannis has only had one game, and it was in the Game 2 blowout, where the bench really helped him out as well, so you didn't even need him to go out and do this. In Game 1, Giannis only 24 points, 7 for 16, 9 for 12 from the free throw line. And I'm just going to go with points on this one and scoring. He's rebounding and assisting at a great rate too.
Right.
But I'm going to go with points because points are how you get, that's how you win basketball games. So in Game 1, only 24 points. In Game 2, only 12 points, 5 for 16, and that was in a double overtime game. So that's actually astounding that the man can only get 12 points in 6 quarters. And then in Game 4 last night, 25 points in a blowout, 9 for 17, 6 for 10 from the free throw line with an air ball at the free throw line as well. Giannis is not playing up to the standard that will allow the Milwaukee Bucks to win this series. And if Kawhi comes out and scores 30, 40 points in Game 5 and Giannis scores 15, Toronto's going to win the series. It's that simple because Chris Middleton can play well. He scored 30 points in Game 4, and they got blown out by 18. Okay? There's been other games where Chris Middleton's played well in this series, but they were not able to really capitalize on it. So I do really think that Giannis is the key to this entire series, along with the benches. But if you're going to talk about stars, I don't even put in. We know Kawhi's going to show up. He has shown up. He's injured. Giannis, though, so far has not showed up and has not been the most dominant player in the league that he can be. And it might be because he's young and this is the first time he's ever gone anywhere close to this to the NBA Finals. But I do believe he needs to play better, even in wins where he's only getting 30 points and 24. I want to see a 40, 50-point game from Giannis. I'm telling you that right now. He needs to score 30-plus, 40, or 50 points in one of these next two games, or it's the Raptors series. And you can blame Giannis if they end up losing this series, if he's going to score 24 points each game.
Yeah, we do need to move on and go to the Warriors series, but I do want to bring up one point. And you talked about Giannis and his field goal attempts. See, this is where I differ with you a little bit. I don't necessarily, it's not that he needs to get 30 or 40 points. We almost expect that for how great of a player he is. The problem that I have is he only took 17 shots. I'm sorry. Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Steph Curry. I'm talking about all the other stars, present and past. You're going to tell me that in a playoff game, Western Conference Finals, if that were Kobe Bryant or James Harden or Steph Curry, they're only going to take 17 shots? Hell no. They're taking at least 30.
16 shots in 6 quarters.
Yeah, no, that's not. See, that is where I have the issue with Giannis. Like I said, it's not about him scoring 40 points.
Point.
He needs to be more of a bulldog.
Yeah.
He needs to just say, give me the ball. I'm taking at least 25 shots, right? Because I get it. Chris Middleton is a great three-point shooter. So is Brogdon. And they rely on their supporting cast more than other teams do. But at the end of the day, like I just said, for the Bucks to win this series, because they've proven that so far they can't go out and do it on the road, at least in this series, Giannis needs to take onus, and he says, I'm shooting the ball 25 to 30 times. And if we go down losing, it's going to be because we went down with our star, right? I think you can be okay with losing if your stars are the ones that go out and at least, try their best and they just come up short. But if you're losing because your star only gets 15 or 17 shots and you're losing because your role players are the ones that were, playing most of the game or affecting most of the game, then I'm sorry, but I think that's just the wrong way of going about it. Like, Giannis is a star. You're paying him for a reason. He is one of the faces of not only the franchise but the NBA. You have to go down swinging with your superstar. Put the ball in your superstar's hands, and if you will live with the consequences there.
And with saying that, so you're still going Bucks in 6?
I am still going Bucks in 6.
I agree with
Giannis, shoot the ball 30 damn times.
Exactly. And I do expect that to happen. They're at home. He will play well. I'm going to go with the Bucks in 6. I predicted in the first place, and why am I going to go away from it now? Giannis hasn't played his best game yet, and it's still a 2-2 series, so we can talk all about him all we want, but they still have won 2 games, even without him playing unbelievable in any of these games. One more fact I really want to say, another reason I'm picking Bucks in 6 is because I absolutely do not trust Kyle Lowry as well. And I know we don't need to go into why. The guy has never got it done. So that's another reason why I'm going to stick with the Bucks, because I trust Chris Middleton more than I do Kyle Lowry as a number 2 guy on a team. All right, moving on. Golden State Warriors are moving on to their 5th straight NBA Finals. We know everybody wanted that, of course, for them to get into the finals. I'm just kidding. We all wanted Portland to win, and they didn't win. Jared, I thought this would be a lot more competitive series. It ended up not being competitive really at all. With 3 come from behind wins, Golden State had, and even without Kevin Durant, the Portland Trailblazers aren't able to win 1 game. I'm super disappointed. What did you think about Portland's performance in this series?
Yeah, it was poor. Portland did not. Now listen, Damian Lillard did suffer that rib injury, and that did affect him clearly. He said that didn't necessarily affect his shooting. But I think his stamina was definitely affected by that. Having to get up and down the court.
It's hard to breathe.
Right, and playing big minutes. He in the last game he played 44 minutes, the same amount as C.J. McCollum. But he's a warrior and he's a trooper, and I respect that. But that, I think, played a huge factor in him being able to be the Damian Lillard that we know. And because this injury happened in Game 2, that clearly affected how he played in Games 3 and Games 4. Listen, the Blazers, unfortunately they came up short again. And I don't want to say blow up the roster, but how many years has this Blazers team had they've had Damian Lillard, they've had C.J. McCollum, right? They haven't necessarily always had a big man. Miles Leonard stepped up huge.
Miles Leonard stepped up, and
right?
You got to remember they also have Jusuf Nurkic, who broke his leg at the end of the season.
True. Okay.
And that would have been a force. And I'll say this. I don't think Jusuf Nurkic is the reason that the Portland Trailblazers beat the almighty Golden State Warriors. Okay? But this series is more competitive, and as we saw, I like to go back to it because it's a team I followed all season. As we saw with Montrezl Harrell and the Clippers, they were able to really bully the Warriors in the post, especially after DeMarcus Cousins got injured. Clint Capella wasn't able to do it because he doesn't bang enough. He's more of a kind of a dunking, athletic center. And the centers for the Blazers are just not good enough to compete with the guys for the Warriors that are guarding them, the Kevon Looney's, the Draymond Greens, and even Andre Iguodala, these small guys that can guard big guys. So I do think that Nurkic would have made a difference, but I'm not going to come out here and saying Jusuf Nurkic is the reason that the Warriors won. No, they got swept.
It's not. But if you're the Blazers, you're sitting here and you're saying, all right, the Warriors have already been without Boogie Cousins, right? So they've been able to adjust to that. The Warriors then lose Kevin Durant, right? And we kind of knew in the back of our minds that he probably wasn't going to play in this series, and his injury was a little more serious than the Warriors were trying to lead on to. But the Warriors aren't going to come out and say that because they want the Blazers to expect the unexpected. But Kevin Durant does not play in any of these games, right? And then Andre Iguodala gets injured as well. So if you're the Blazers, listen, for the Warriors, they have McKinney, Jordan Bell, Looney, Quinn Cook. I'm naming all these guys who are role players. Quinn Cook got a decent amount of minutes during the regular season, but McKinney, Jordan Bell, and Looney, for the most part, that's like a summer league roster right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'll say this: Looney, I think, has really turned the corner as far as the player goes. But I agree. Jordan Bell.
He has. I'm saying
back, yeah.
For the Western Conference Finals, if you would have told me that the Warriors would have had, let's see here, they would have had 26 minutes from McKinney, 14 minutes from Bell, 29 minutes from Looney, 14 from Cook.
That's a lot of minutes.
And 10 from Jerebko, right? And they all contributed big minutes, whether it was putbacks, offensive rebounds, still defending. I mean, that Warriors defense did not miss a beat without any of their players, right? And Andre Iguodala, who's arguably their best defensive player with Draymond Green. So I know I was kind of going around a little bit, but basically this is on the Blazers to me. Because I'm not saying that the Blazers would have won this series, but you can't win a game?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
One game?
And Jared, they were leading 3 of them.
I know. They had double digit. They had like a 17-point lead in the end of the third quarter.
It's
that to me is where I'm like, all right, the Blazers have to add to the pieces. Whether you have to trade someone, whether you have to just go out and acquire someone, they have to do something different because this same Blazers team, I get what you said, they lost their big man, but Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum cannot do it by themselves, and they proved that by not being able to win a game against a Warriors team that was completely banged up. Obviously, Steph and Klay Thompson are bad boys, and they're the Splash Brothers for a reason, right? Steph Curry, arguably the best shooter in NBA history, not just now, today, but in history. So I'm not taking anything away from that. But the fact that the Blazers couldn't get a game, come on, man,
it's astounding.
Not one.
What's amazing about this, too, is, so this is what I wrote down. And I did not write this down right now. I wrote this down this morning before our podcast. I said, Portland was never in the Warriors league, and amazing they couldn't pull off one W versus Durant-less Warriors. Lillard had injured ribs, but the rest of the team didn't step up. team needs Nurkic, but ultimately more. So I completely agree with everything you're saying. They do need Nurkic, but they need another star, okay, to win an NBA championship in this day and age. You cannot rely on Al-Farouq Amino and Mo Harkless, two guys that can't score, okay? You can't rely on an unbelievable game from Myers Leonard.
No, he had 25 in the first half. That ain't happening.
And
again.
Enes Kanter, who's been on 15 teams the last 3 years, okay? So, obviously, these are not the guys that you need leading your team. When Lillard goes down, you need that second, maybe third guy to step up. It's one of the reasons why I'm saying the Raptors aren't going to win their series, because I think we know Kawhi's banged up. I don't think Lowry's going to step up. I don't think those other players are going to step up for the Raptors, and that's why I'm picking the Bucks. So it's the same thing with this. I don't know why you couldn't win one game, especially Game 4. You're leading by so much. Iguodala's not even playing in that game. It's literally just Clay, Steph, and Draymond. That's it. And they're winning these games. You know, the bench is playing well, but these guys are dominating the game, right? And I do want to say something about this because, you know, if you look at, like, you go back to me 4 years ago, I hated Draymond Green with all passion because he's a thorn in the side of the Lakers and Clippers, right? Annoying player, gets thrown out, yells in people's faces, kicking people in the nuts during games, right? But now, I'll tell you this recent playoff run and with what he said earlier this week, where he said, I'm not focusing on the refs anymore, I'm focusing on the team. Man, this is dangerous for the NBA. I really have seen, with following the Warriors this playoffs and seeing them play the Clippers and watching all those games so intently, how much of a true quarterback he is on the court. And Draymond Green, I'm telling you right now, is going to be the NBA Finals MVP. I'm calling right now. Because I don't think Durant is going to play in the NBA Finals. I think he did tear his Achilles, and I honestly don't think they're going to say it, but I think he did. And, I don't know if they can legally do that and say that he, sprained his thing when he had a worse injury, but I do think I don't think he's actually going to play in the NBA Finals. The Warriors are going to win, whoever they play, and Draymond Green's going to be MVP because this man is so unselfish nowadays that he's literally giving up open shots and open opportunities to get guys like Steph and Clay hot and more open and get their games going because he knows they're the true guys that are going to win the championship.
That's the Warriors game right there.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you brought that up because, listen, Draymond Green has been doing that basically his entire career.
And we just haven't noticed
ever since he's played with Steph and Clay and now Kevin Durant. It's just becoming more and more noticeable, especially with Durant not being there. I will say you are seeing the Warriors move the ball around a little more without Durant. I think, and it's like with the same thing with LeBron James. When you have a superstar of that caliber, same thing with Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. It's almost like for these players, they're even in awe of their own teammate. So when they give the ball to Kevin Durant, as much as you would think they would still move around and run offense, sometimes it's just like, hey, Durant, you take it, you go one-on-one, post up or shoot the three, and you're like in awe. You want to watch, you want to be a fan. So I think that's what happens with this Warriors offense sometimes is they became kind of lackluster because they had the luxury of having Kevin Durant and Steph who can create their own shots, guys who can create their own shots. So the offense wasn't flowing as nicely as you would expect it to. Now without Kevin Durant, even though you still have Steph and Clay, you need to move the ball around a little more to get those guys open. The thing that you brought up, the point that I wanted to make that you made so great was the fact that this Warriors team, everyone knows their role, right? And the Warriors have basically broken it down to percentages, saying that Steph and Clay shoot close to, if not 40% from three, right? And Kevin Durant, when healthy, does as well.
Yep.
So we are a three-point shooting team. We're going to rely on that. So instead of Draymond Green or Jordan Bell or Andrew Bogut or Quinn Cook or any of the other players, taking 10 to 15, 20 shots a game, I don't care if those guys are wide open. We're going to hold the ball and wait for Steph or Clay or KD to come around the screen and get open, and we're going to let them shoot the ball 30-plus times a game, right? Because the percentage says that they will make more shots than they miss. So that's exactly what the Warriors do. And you saw that clearly, and all of these playoff games so far, that literally Draymond Green, they're not even guarding Draymond Green. No. They're giving him like 3-4 feet of space, and Draymond Green is literally just holding the ball, waiting for Clay or Steph to come down on the screen, and he will let them shoot into double coverage because they're still a better shooter than Draymond is wide open.
No, and that's the thing. What he's doing is, and it's almost like if you're looking at, the next two teams that will play them is Toronto and Milwaukee. Why not? Maybe you think about guarding Draymond Green a little harder because he's just sitting there like a quarterback in the pocket for 10 seconds with an amazing offensive line, where you can just look and let guys get open. I'm using a football analogy because that's the closest thing I've seen to this. I've never seen this in the NBA where a guy just stands back there and facilitates the offense like Draymond. And Iguodala does a similar thing too. And here's the thing: Draymond is wide open and he misses every three. Okay, he misses every three until there's 5 seconds left, and then he makes it. Right. It's the definition of a clutch player, and that's why I think he's going to win the MVP of the NBA Finals, because I think writers are going to start recognizing that this guy is running the offense. He's running the offense through Steve Curry. He's running the offense through Clay and Steph, and it's been the reason why they've won 6 games in a row, and it's the reason the Warriors got so good in the first place without Durant. Remember, they won a Finals without Durant, and they went to a Game 7 in the Finals without Durant, and guess what? When Draymond left the lineup, that's when they started losing that series too. So I'm just saying, I'm going to give. I haven't given Draymond credit in the past due to my dislike of him as a player. Now I've really seen what he does. I appreciate it. And even he got dunked on the other game. What did he do? He got the ball inbound in him, and he just sprinted down the court as fast as he could, got fouled, and got to the free throw line within 4 seconds. So it's the same thing. So I know we have to finish up this segment, but I didn't want to give Draymond Green credit and really show why this Warriors team is so good, even without Andre Iguodala and even without Kevin Durant, because you have a quarterback on offense in Draymond Green.
Well, last 2 points here quickly. You talked about, if you're letting Draymond Green basically sit back there and quarterback, maybe you need to come up and guard him a little more. Well, guess what? Draymond Green had 11 assists in the game. So he's still a very good passer, right? And so it's almost like pick your poison. Do you want to
That's what makes this team so dangerous.
Force him to maybe eventually take that shot? Or, guard him and let him drive and then dish. Yeah. The second thing is, for the first time in NBA history, 2 players from the same team got a triple-double in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's actually amazing.
Steph
that's never
and
happened.
Draymond Green both had triple-doubles. Point in case, like we were just talking about with the Raptors and the Bucks, their superstars need to step up for them to win. That's exactly what Steph and Draymond Green both did with triple-doubles, leading their team to the NBA Finals.
Exactly. And then they also have Klay Thompson. So, Klay Thompson is going to, Kevin Durant, if he does come back, will step up as well. We know he will. So, we do need to move topics. And Jared, this next topic is going to be a good one. The Los Angeles Lakers are in a lot of turmoil right now, and Magic Johnson's been talking some stuff, and so we're gonna discuss that. We're gonna discuss what it means for the Lakers and all that coming up after this break. This is the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio, on the TuneIn Radio app, and on Facebook Live.
When I looked up and said, wait a minute, I only really answer to Jeanie Buss. Now I got Tim involved. And I said, it's time for me to go. I got things happening that was being said behind my back. I don't have the power that I thought I had to make the decisions. And I told them, when it's not fun for me, when I think that I don't have the decision-making power that I thought I had, then I got to step aside.
Interesting, though. Because 6 years is a lot, and that means he won't be able to come to the MLB until he's 25
Which is right in the prime of his
career.
It
also means, that's true, or it also means that he can sign out of the Japanese league, too, potentially, without, doing the whole college thing and sitting in the minors.
And truly, it's saddening and disheartening to think he believes things are a misperception. I think all of us in life probably have been through things where maybe there's third-party whispers or he said, she said things that aren't true. And then I have talked to him several times since he decided to step away. We've had many joy-filled conversations. In fact, 2 days ago, we were reliving the combine and the 4th pick and talking about the great future that this franchise has. So these things are surprising to hear and disheartening. But I look forward to the opportunity to talk with him and sit down with him and work through them, just like in any relationship, because they're just simply not true.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio, the TuneIn app, and Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us again. If you missed the first segment, we talked about the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals as the Warriors swept the Blazers, and the Raptors and the Bucks are tied at 2 apiece. But it is now time to move on to the very sad and drama-filled Los Angeles Lakers, as Magic Johnson finally spoke on Monday, and he did not hold back, basically answering questions on ESPN's First Take about the entire saga and why he did, in fact, leave the Lakers. So we have a lot to get into. There's the Magic Johnson side. There's the Rob Pelinka side. What is next for the Lakers? LeBron James is obviously still there. Will they be able to bring another free agent in to pair with LeBron? So many unanswered questions. And, Nick, I do want to get your first thoughts on all this. And let's start with Magic Johnson. And I'm sure you have, if you didn't see the whole thing, I'm sure you have seen some quotes from his talk. What do you think of what he had to say as far as Rob Pelinka being a backstabber and why Magic ended up leaving the Lakers?
Well, first of all, I want to say something. If you're wondering, it was between us and First Take to get that Magic interview. Unfortunately, we were not able to get it. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about it.
It's okay. It's all right.
All joking aside.
We'll get him next time.
It's just such a bad look for the Lakers, this whole scenario. And Magic Johnson, I do appreciate that he was candid and that he kind of let everything loose and that he didn't do his typical Magic kind of walk around everything because, he's a nice guy, right? He's not trying to create drama. But I think in this case, he felt that a lot of people were blaming him for a lot of this. And I think he wanted to come out and just clear the air and be like, no, let me tell you all these stories, all these personal, in-depth things to show you that it really wasn't me. And yes, you can say that I quit because I wanted to be on Twitter or whatever that, and I still think that he did quit for the wrong reasons. But he explains in his interview that he was promised certain things, and those things didn't end up coming true. And a lot of times when you're at a job and things are promised to you, or at least told to you with a certain amount of certainty, and then they become not true, or you see other people getting power and all this stuff, it rubs you the wrong way. I've had to deal with this in the past. I'm sure you have as well. And people deal with this on a daily basis. Magic Johnson had to deal with kind of being lied to with this Lakers organization. He was told that he was going to be kind of one of the real final voices in making basketball decisions. That ended up not being true. There was people from the business department that were making decisions. There was former Lakers wives that were getting involved in situations and stuff like that. And even some of the Buss brothers that are lower down the totem pole wanted more power in the organization, which that's the thing that pisses me off the most about this whole organization, is the nepotism element of this whole thing. That, I get Jeanie Buss has been the president, but the other younger brothers should not have anything to do with any major decisions with the Lakers. And we're seeing this problem throughout the Lakers organization. These random people are getting to make major decisions for a billion-dollar company, a billion-dollar team. So I'm going to actually side with Magic on this one. I think what he's saying, and because he was so candid, I'm going to go with him compared to Rob Pelinka, who is an agent at heart. You don't really know what he's saying is true. And he was put in a difficult position. I get it during Frank Vogel's, introductory press conference, but he just comes off less genuine to me. And I wanted to tweet this, and I just forgot, and the timing didn't come out to make the tweet properly. But Rob Pelinka comes off as an unlikable guy, and he's the guy that is meeting all these players and all these potential free agents. I don't like that. I wanted Magic to be there. I wanted LeBron to be there. Even Jeanie's a very nice person, and although people might be like, okay, well, the team has kind of not been very good while you're under it, at least Jeanie comes off as a genuine person. Rob Pelinka doesn't rub me the right way a lot, and I just think that in this case, since Magic was so candid, I'm going to side with Magic on this, and I do think that he was done wrong, although I don't think he should have quit, and I don't think that he quit for all the right reasons. I think he does have a gripe, and it just shows there's more internal problems with this Lakers team.
Yeah, number one, I got to bust out my Magic Johnson jersey here.
Oh, there you go.
The old
well,
school.
I did not see that. The whole time we've been here, I have not seen that. That's
yeah,
great.
I just took this out right now.
Gotcha.
I'm going to put this on because...
Please, stand up for the camera.
Yeah,
so
I'm siding with Magic Johnson here. All right.
We both are. I
haven't worn this in a while, but this is one of my favorite jerseys.
This is a great
jersey, Jerry.
Oh,
yeah, the old school Magic Johnson.
If you're listening on OC Rock Radio or the TuneIn app, Jared just put on a legitimate old school Magic Johnson jersey to show his support.
Yeah.
But yeah, as the resident true Laker fan in this room, please give your thoughts. As I know, I look somewhat to the outside of this LeBron-run Lakers organization. I don't like it as much as the former Lakers teams with Kobe. But so as a resident true, fan, what are your thoughts on this?
Right. So I'm number one. I'm happy that Magic came out and did speak very openly about this entire situation, answering every question, not really holding anything back. I'm happy that he did that because now, fans and viewers like us, we get to now dissect that and really have a better understanding of what really happened. And you brought up a lot of points, and I do want to say that the only thing that I really disagree that Magic did was Magic didn't let LeBron James know that he was going to be
I forgot to mention that.
Right?
Yeah, that was one of the things that
a lot of people are saying, well, why didn't you tell Jeanie Buss? Magic came out before this interview on Monday. This was, I believe, a few weeks ago. Or it was actually right after he actually stepped down from his position. And he said, because Jeanie Buss is such a good friend of mine, and we have such a long history and a great relationship, Magic knew that if he went and had a meeting with Jeanie, she would be able to persuade him to stay. And Magic was just so done with this. He wasn't happy, and he wanted to get out, that he didn't want to be persuaded back in, knowing that Jeanie can do that.
Exactly.
So that's why he didn't speak with her.
Move.
Now, I'm not saying that I would have done the same thing, but I understand more why he didn't go to Jeanie. Obviously, he didn't go to Rob Pelinka because he feels that Pelinka was the one that was talking behind his back and was saying all these things and causing a lot of frustration, not only with Magic Johnson, but just throughout the organization. So obviously he's not going to go to him. But the one thing that I would have done differently is I would have went and I would have spoken with LeBron man to man and said, hey, just a quick heads up, this is what I'm doing. Don't tell anyone. I'm about to go tell the public pretty soon. So, but when it comes to, you said that you don't agree with some of the reasons why Magic left. Here's the thing. Magic Johnson, I don't know if he's actually a billionaire, but he's pretty damn close, right? He has a lot of other outside businesses and projects going on. He owns a stake in the Dodgers, and he has a lot of other mentorship programs and other things going on, right? So when he initially took this job with the Lakers, he had a meeting with Jeanie Buss, and he said, listen, I'm not giving up my other priorities to be here full time. So I will obviously take this position, and I am, he's obviously a beloved Laker, and he loves that organization. But he said, I won't be able to spend 100% of my time here, or 100% of my efforts. Yeah. So if you're okay with that, and you're okay with me necessarily maybe not being in the office every day and having to, do other things, then yes, I'm on board with you. And she agreed to that, and she said, that's fine. The second thing was, he said, do I have the power to basically make all the decisions here as far as hiring coaches, firing, as well as coaches and players? Jeanie signed off on that as well and said yes. So for Magic Johnson, not only was he hearing things behind his back from Rob Pelinka and others in the organization, but when he wanted to fire Luke Walton, Jeanie Buss originally was hesitant. Magic Johnson went back to her for a second meeting, and she said, okay, you can fire Luke Walton. Then the third day, there was like 3 consecutive days of meetings between Jeanie Buss and Magic Johnson. On the third day, Jeanie changed her position, and she said, no, maybe we should we should give him another chance. And I think that's when Magic really basically said, okay, I don't have the power that I thought I did. So that's when he said, you know what? With everything going on, I'm stepping away because I'm not having fun anymore. And like I said, Magic wasn't doing this for the money. He doesn't need the money.
No, that's
right.
True. Yeah.
Magic was doing this for the love of basketball and for the love of this Lakers organization. So the fact that he's being talked to behind his back, he's not having fun anymore, he doesn't have the full control and power like he thought he did, why should he stay when he has other ventures that he can go to and clearly be the guy, right? So from that standpoint, I don't blame Magic Johnson for leaving at all. It sucks as a Lakers fan, and obviously I want him to be there to be the main face along with LeBron James to bring in other superstars and to get this franchise back to the championship caliber that they used to be. But like I said, I can't really blame Magic for leaving, because if I was in his exact position, other than maybe telling LeBron and maybe some other people, I probably would have done the same thing at this point.
Yeah, it's and I want to clarify something. So I'm not saying after this interview on First Take, I do believe that Magic should have left the Lakers, but I was citing things like, how he's gone on Twitter immediately and kind of started talking about all the other games. And you're right, the thing about LeBron, where he didn't mention LeBron as well, he didn't tell LeBron face-to-face, man-to-man, I didn't like that too. What I'm saying is I didn't like 100% of the way he did it,
okay.
but I do agree with you, he should have left this organization. This is, I don't want to cuss in this podcast, but this is, it's a crap show here, okay? And you know what I'm trying to really say when I say that, but it's, there's stuff going wrong. And he mentioned the thing, I mentioned the thing about, Tim Harris, who's the COO, who shouldn't really have any power in making legitimate basketball decisions. He's more on the marketing side. He's more on the business side of Lakers, is getting say over Magic Johnson. That's ridiculous. And I'm glad you brought up the point, because he said so many good things in this interview that it's hard. I'm glad we both have kind of brought different things. He said the thing about how with the Luke Walton firing, Jeanie Buss signed off on it, then said no, and then cited that I believe it was this man, Tim Harris, who was one of the main reasons, because they're friends. Right? Okay. So beyond the ridiculousness of that the guy is friends, so he doesn't want to get fired, all right, this eerily reminds me of back, I'm forgetting exactly the year, but back when the Lakers were trying to find a new head coach after they had fired Mike Brown. A couple games into the season, there was major rumors that Mr. Phil Jackson might be the head coach of the Lakers, and they went in on a Friday and asked Phil Jackson and Jeanie. All she had to do was go home to ask him, literally, because they were married at the time. And she goes, Phil, we would like to have you as head coach. He says, let me think about it over the weekend. And Phil Jackson went on Jay Leno a couple years later, and said that when I went and mulled over that decision, I was going to become the head coach of the Lakers again. This was 2011, 2012. Instead, Jeanie and the rest of the Lakers organization did not allow Phil Jackson that allotted time that they had originally given him, and instead just hired Mike D'Antoni without actually hearing back from Phil Jackson. That story about Luke Walton sounds eerily similar to that story, where the Lakers promised something and then just for some reason didn't give it enough time and then made the wrong decision in the end. And then they fired him anyways. So it's like, it's, again, and I want to bring this up too, because we talked about this a lot before the podcast even started, about how there's been a problem with the way this organization has been run since Jerry Buss kind of left the ownership to his kids when he wasn't healthy enough, and then he eventually passed away. This team has been a shell of itself. really since the 2010 championship against the Boston Celtics, when they won it in Game 7, amazing, Kobe's 5th title. Jerry Buss has not really had a hand in anything, and obviously he passed away in 2000. He kind of gave, I forget exactly which year he passed away, but he eventually gave the power to his kids. Ever since his kids have run the organization, the Lakers have not been good. It's plain and simple. They lost in the first round of the playoffs multiple years in a row, and then now they've been a horrible organization, losing 50, 60 games in some seasons, and then even with LeBron James only winning 37. So, Jared, again, with the family element of this, how much blame do you put on the Buss family for this whole scenario with Magic Johnson?
All of it. All of it. Because at the end of the day, and this doesn't matter if we're talking about the Lakers, if we're talking about, the Jets and all their saga, how they just fired their GM, right? The ownership and CEO of the company, they are the ones that ultimately make all these decisions, right? So let's get into this family aspect a little bit, and I'm glad you brought that up. What is one of the main elements or factors that you think of when it comes to family? And to me, it's emotion, right? Because obviously you are more attached to your brother than you are to me, even though we've been good friends for a long time, right?
Yes.
It's more. There's more of an emotional factor there.
Of course. Yeah.
So for Jeanie Buss and her brothers, there's an emotional factor there because yes, you're right. They have proven, her brothers, that they do not deserve the power to run the Lakers organization, right? They've proven that. But she doesn't necessarily want to just kick them out because they're family. So she has to keep throwing them bones, right? She has to keep them around to keep them happy, right? Regardless, they're going to make their money. Regardless of if they're actually signed on with the organization or not, they're going to get their money, right? But she wants to keep them happy. She doesn't want them constantly in her ear every time they have family dinners. So they're a part of the organization, but not like they would like to. That, I think, now extends to family friends. That would be Kurt Rambis and his wife, right? That would be Harris, the other gentleman that you mentioned, who's friends with Luke Walton, who didn't want him fired.
He was promoted around the exact same time the COO, around the same time that the Buss started to get.
And I think you can even put Kobe Bryant in that family friend discussion.
Rob Pelinka.
Because that's where Rob Pelinka comes in. So here's my point with all of this. Emotion comes into play because for Jeanie, it seems like she doesn't want to disappoint anyone that she cares about. And obviously she didn't want to disappoint Magic Johnson either. But it's like she can't say no to her friends, right? So instead of hiring a veteran general manager who's had experience, or instead of even going out and trying to get a Masai Ujiri from the Raptors or someone from, or Jerry West and literally saying, how much is this team paying you? We'll double it, right? Trying to go and get an experienced general manager or basketball player of operations who can come in and not only draw in superstars, but knows how to actually run an NBA organization. Instead of doing that, Jeanie Buss prefers to keep her close friends around and think that with those close, tight-knit relationships, they can just have that tight bond, and eventually this will all go away. And this is only continuing to get worse and worse and worse. Because right now, in order to get to Jeanie Buss, if you're in that Lakers organization, you have to go through Kurt Rambis' wife. And I'm sorry, but what background does she have in basketball?
I love that.
To where she gets to be the gatekeeper between Jeanie Buss and everyone else. I'm sorry, but that to me, that's completely wrong. And when that is the head of your organization, everything else will fall out of place. So
I agree.
It's not a surprise why Magic Johnson left. It's not a surprise that the Lakers with LeBron James couldn't even make the playoffs, and they haven't made the playoffs for the last 6 seasons. And I'm sorry, but it's not a surprise that Rob Pelinka, the rookie general manager who has been an agent for his entire career and has no lick of experience as a general manager, is now running the entire basketball operations for the most profitable and one of the most successful franchises in NBA history.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't this sound great, guys? Like this is going to work? no, it's not going to work. And you bring up great points. It's so ridiculous that Jeanie Buss is the president of this team, the owner of this team, because she obviously doesn't know what she's doing, and she probably, she married Phil Jackson back in the day, right? That probably even got her enough standard to become the owner in the first place. It's just, I'm not saying that she, slept her way to the top or anything. I'm not saying that. No. I'm absolutely not saying that. But what I'm saying is, even Jerry, I think, in some ways screwed up at the end with giving his kids power. You should have given, hell, even give Phil Jackson something like something like that. Like, let him be president, like something like that. But giving your family members, and I know this just happens, and that people do this all the time in companies. And I've worked for companies where there's been an element of nepotism that kind of seems ridiculous, and you have a younger kid who doesn't know what he's doing, running something. But I just think that the fact that Jeanie, the way she is running the Lakers, and that that Rob Pelinka is making all the basketball decisions, it just is the exact opposite of what should be happening, and the exact opposite of other successful teams in the NBA. You look at the Warriors, it's not the case. Right, you look at the Houston Rockets, not the case. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks, Toronto Raptors. It's not the case. These are the teams that were going to go to the finals, or had a chance at the finals. Even Portland, there's no nepotism in there. There's nobody you're complaining about that's running the organization. So, just like I always say with James Dolan, New York Knicks, until this bad ownership either calms down, gets less power, or completely sells the team, I don't see success coming to this organization, whether you have the best player in the world on your roster or not. So,
how much time do we have left in this?
We have a good 8-9 minutes.
Good, perfect. Good. Because there's a couple more things I want to say.
So, but I was going to bring up the Clippers thing with KD and all that stuff. What do you want to talk about that, or do you want to say something?
I want to finish off this Lakers topic really quick. Two things very quickly. If Jeanie Buss is so attached, to her friendships and everything, which I'm not opposed to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have. Obviously, I have very close friends. I live with my best friend.
Yeah.
Right. It's one thing to have great close relationships with people that you trust. Go out to dinner with them once a week. Go buy them a steak dinner. All right. You don't need to bring them on to your business just because they are good friends with you when they have a proven track record, or no track record for that matter, of being successful in this sport. Kurt Rambis has proven that he has been a horrible head coach, right? It's one thing for him to be an assistant and maybe even like a special advisor, but to actually have a legitimate say in what this organization does as far as making personnel decisions is ludicrous. And the fact that his wife, like I said, is the gatekeeper to getting to Jeanie Buss is even more ridiculous. So for Jeanie Buss, it's about putting your friendships aside, because at the end of the day, this is a business, right? You cannot just pile on a bunch of your friends and say, oh, hey, guys, I've got all my best friends and all my closest people with me. No one's going to turn their back on me. Let's go try to make this work. Obviously, I think it's been long enough now. There's been a long enough period to where it has not panned out, and it's time for this Lakers organization to go out and get an actual basketball X's and O's person who has experience as a general manager and a president of basketball operations, and hand in the keys to the kingdom and back the hell out of the way.
Seriously.
That's my first thing. Second thing, because I know you want to get to the KD and the Clipper thing, and we talked about this off air. Max Kellerman on ESPN's First Take brought up a great point that I wanted to talk about. And he talked about how there's an underlining story going on with all of this right now. And the fact that Max Kellerman thinks that there is a 3-horse race for whoever the next owner of the Lakers will be. Because he thinks that eventually, if this Lakers organization continues to slide, that this Buss family will not want to be the blunt of all this criticism, and they will eventually sell. So the 3 people that Max Kellerman said are in line to potentially be the next owners of this team: LeBron James, who's already publicly come out and said that he wants to be an NBA owner one day; Magic Johnson, who Max Kellerman says didn't even know he was running in this race; and he has the financial backing to own a team if he really wants to in Magic. And the third is Kobe Bryant, who probably has who's probably leading this race at this point because Rob Pelinka is entrenched in this organization and he is Jeanie Buss's right-hand man. So, those guys are all Lakers, or all former Lakers, and are tied to this Lakers organization. But I just thought it was an interesting point that Max said as far as, it's a 3-team or a 3-person race, and these guys are in some way trying to position themselves to one day own this Lakers organization. To that you say what?
It's very interesting, and it does sound realistic. We talked about this before the podcast. I do believe that Kobe Bryant is ahead of the line with all of that because Rob Pelinka is the GM. He knows him. Kobe has been very, very good friends with Jeanie Buss over the years. And he also has had, I believe, would probably have the most money out of all those guys. And it would make most sense because Magic just left the organization, probably wants to cool off a little bit. Kobe Bryant has been out of the league long enough to where he's had time to really think about formulating and how to become an owner of the Lakers, although he's the owner of his own company, so I don't think it would be that difficult. And LeBron James is still playing for the team. Obviously, you can't own the team if you're playing for them. So I do think Kobe would be on the fast track if you had to take bets out of the 3. But it's a very interesting concept, and I'm glad you brought that to the podcast today because I had not heard that. I had not thought of that before. And it's very interesting. I personally, like I've said on this podcast a couple times, would not like that because I think the Lakers need to become more of a basketball team and less of the Lakers, if that makes any sense. They're not the Lakers of the past. They are the Lakers that have sucked for the last 5 or 6 years and really have not been great since they won the championship in 2010. We're coming up on 10 years, guys, and they've been mediocre ever since that title. So, Kobe, he's a little different, and and essentially everything's turned to gold that he's touched, literally and figuratively. And, but I'm going to shy away from that. If it happens and it's successful, I'll eat my words. But I honestly think we need to have like a financial mogul or someone come in
someone who has no relationship with the Lakers organization.
Exactly.
Currently.
Someone you can even be a fan, someone from LA, but it just needs to be someone that's not a Laker. Because I think the Lakers have gone over the top with the whole Lakers thing. And like you're saying, Jeanie Buss hiring all her friends. I was just looking through the whole management thing while you're explaining that, and I'm seeing buses I've never heard of before in other just lower little levels of things.
Right, like I said, she's throwing them bones.
Yeah.
She's trying to keep them afloat. Exactly.
And that's great, and I would probably do a similar thing, although I don't think I'd do it the way Jeanie's doing it. But, it's just gone too far, and if Kobe ends up owning the team, I'm not going to be happy, but if it's successful, I'll eat my words. Or if any of these other guys. But very good point you bring up right there. Okay, so real quick, we only have a couple minutes left for this. There was a rumor that came out from Mark Stein of the Los Angeles Times that he was talking to Kevin Durant's agent, and apparently it's emerged that the Clippers are a potential landing spot for Kevin Durant, as legitimate as we've heard with the New York Knicks. So now, Jared, we have the Lakers in turmoil. LeBron James had a horrible first year. They haven't been able to add anybody. People don't really think they're going to be able to add a Kawhi Leonard and Kyrie Irving. And now rumors are coming out that Kevin Durant might come to LA and kind of take the spotlight away from LeBron. I know these are rumors, and we don't like bringing up rumors, but your thoughts on just what might happen with LeBron in LA. I'll pose this question. Do you think there's a chance that LeBron isn't successful in LA with this Lakers team and doesn't end up winning a championship? And doesn't even really lead this team to a successful playoff.
Is there a chance that LeBron does not win a championship with this Lakers team? Yes, I think that's a very good chance.
To change the question, because that's not, obviously that he gets hurt, all that stuff. But do you think there's a chance that he's not even successful in any realm with this Lakers team?
No.
Do you think no matter what?
I think
even
no
if
matter
Kevin
what,
Durant were to come to the same city and join that Clippers team that was successful in the playoffs this year. Well, successful this year, and then really put it to the Warriors. You don't think that would hamper a chance of LeBron getting deep in the playoffs?
Well, I mean, of course it would because they're in the same division and, of course, the same conference. So from that standpoint, yes, it would make it more difficult, and the West is already more difficult than the East.
Yeah.
But if LeBron James is able to play – now, let's get one thing straight. If LeBron James did not get injured this season, the Lakers were in 4th place. The Lakers would have undoubtedly been in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that they
true.
would have made it, far or even to the Western Conference Finals. But they would have made it to the playoffs, okay? So that's out of the question right there. So from that standpoint, that's already a win because the Lakers haven't been in the playoffs in the last 5 years, like you just mentioned. But regardless of where KD goes, and I think that's an interesting rumor, an interesting debatable topic, but for LeBron, I think him along with the other young core of players that this team has, having another year under their belt, if LeBron can stay healthy, this Lakers team is a playoff contending team. So from that standpoint, I think they can be successful. When you get to the playoffs, LeBron has all the experience in the world, and we've seen what he can do as far as shouldering players and being the leader and guiding teams through playoffs. We saw him do it against the star-studded Warriors.
This same team
by himself without Kyrie.
The same team we gave credit to earlier today, LeBron James won 2 games in the finals against.
So he can still do it. But I'm losing confidence by the day if the Lakers, aren't able to bring in another. I'm not saying they have to bring a superstar like a Kawhi, but if they need to at least get shooters built around LeBron to where he can trust other guys, because the NBA, let's face it, is going to a 3-point shooting league. That's just what it is. That is not necessarily LeBron James' strength. He likes to drive to the basket, get and ones, but he also likes to get his teammates involved. And if you think about it, when he's won championships, he's had a sharpshooter. He's either had Miller, he's had Ray Allen, he had Kyle Korver.
Yep.
So he's always had a shooter, or at least one, more like 2 or 3 shooters surrounding him to where he can outlet and dish and not necessarily have to take all those threes because, like I said, that's not his strength.
Yeah, and the Lakers team is built around guys Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, who are not 3-point
No, they can shoot it, but they are not sharpshooters.
Yeah, and I also think that, Lakers obviously need to fix their free throw issues as well. LeBron himself needs to fix that issue. And you're right, the 3-point thing is the biggest thing because teams aren't going to win the finals if you can't shoot threes. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. If you think it's going to happen, you're in a different realm of thinking with most NBA fans. But so a lot to talk about, and this will not be the last time we talk about the Lakers on this podcast. We already went longer than the first segment talking about this, so we do need to finish it up. And we could talk about this literally for the next 2 segments, I feel like. But the Lakers, they're in turmoil right now, and there just needs to be changes, and at least maybe some acknowledgement from the ownership that changes will come and that they will do better. Because I hate to always just be speculating that it's crazy in there and all that stuff, but then it gets revealed that it actually is, And I just think Jeanie Buss and maybe Rob Pelinka and these people need to come out there running the Lakers and go, hey, we'll do better. There was a protest the other day about the Lakers management before all this Magic stuff happened, okay? And we didn't even talk about it on this podcast, but obviously the fans are disgruntled. And I think the whole NBA is disgruntled because the NBA wants to see the Lakers succeed. And they're not only not succeeding, but they're kind of going in the opposite direction and falling apart in a way. But so we do need to go to break.
Get it together, Lakers.
Exactly.
Come on
We do need to go to break. Jared will likely take off the Magic Johnson jersey.
We might keep it on.
But he might keep it on.
It's a good fit. I like it.
Exactly. But we're going to break. We're coming up next with some more craziness. Do you care? We have a couple. We obviously our abundance of questions, and then a little later in the podcast, we're going to end the basketball talk right now, as far as the podcast goes. We're going to talk about all the NFL storylines that are going on. A lot of interesting things going on there, and then we're going to predict the Stanley Cup Finals. The Bruins and Blues are going to be the teams competing in that, and that will start on Monday. So we want to predict that, obviously, because the podcast will not be able to predict that before the first game. So. Coming up next on the Cover 2 podcast, all of that stuff here on the TuneIn Radio app, OC Rock Radio, and Facebook Live.
I'm very happy here. I'm happy with the team. This year was probably the most enjoyable year as a head coach as far as the group of guys that we had. And, personally, we've kind of gone through peaks and valleys over my tenure, and this is another peak. So I couldn't be more happy that things have turned out the way they have personally and for the team.
I mean, I didn't even see what I did until I saw the replays. I know I have tremendous power. That's no secret.
Yeah, so a lot of the ones you brought up in the text I wrote down, like Memphis getting the #1 college basketball recruit. I just don't know what the guy's name is.
No, so yeah. So here's the 8 that I think we should do. Or just let me know what you think.
And at this point, I think I've proved myself with the record that I have in the many a body that hit the canvas. Because of my power that I display. I'm an intelligent fighter. I'm very smart in the ring. Where I set these guys up, and they say speed is power. But if you have power on top of speed, it's I don't know what to call my right hand anymore. You know what I mean? Atomic bomb, dynamite.
It's the hammer of Thor.
It's been a tough day, but now can enjoy it as that starts left turn towards the hole and in. And Brooks Koepka wins the 101st PGA Championship, his 4th major championship.
We are back live here on the Cover 2 podcast on the TuneIn Radio app, on OC Rock Radio, and on Facebook Live. Once again, my name is Nick Neenan.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And Jared Smith, what time is it right now?
It is time for Do You Care?
Yes, Do You Care, our favorite segment of the show. Although I did like that Lakers segment we just did, tearing apart their organization. So this might be the second favorite segment on the show today. But nonetheless, we have an abundance of random and interesting sports news that we're not going to be able to talk about later on the podcast. So we want to bring it up now. Like we usually do, it's rapid fire questions. We're going to each answer one and say whether we care about that topic or not, and then kind of explain what happened or what it is if you guys don't know what it is. So, Jared, you're going to get the first question. Do you care that Brooks Koepka won his 2nd consecutive PGA championship over the weekend?
I do care, and listen, he's won 4 major championships since 2017, so I think that's a huge feat in itself. And I think there was a lot of pressure on a lot of these golfers, and the fact that Tiger Woods made that huge comeback, obviously, and won the major. And it was like, okay, Tiger Woods is back now, right? And obviously he came up and stunk up the joint pretty much, and left an open door for Brooks Koepka and others to, kind of go ahead of Tiger Woods for that specific championship. But I have to give him all the credit in the fact that he has been so consistent in these last couple years. Do you know where he's? I was trying to look it up, but I couldn't find it before. Where he's actually ranked?
I can't imagine
nationally.
He's not number 1.
Right, he has to be.
He has to be one or
top
two.
3.
And I'll tell you this because I do put. Me and my dad have a tradition of kind of putting bets on each of these tournaments, and the last 2 or 3 times it's been him and Dustin Johnson who have been favorites in every single tournament, along with Tiger Woods. So. I can't imagine he's not 1, or at worst he's number 2. But he's got to be number 1. It's 4 majors in a little over 2 years. It's insane. It's Tiger Woods stuff.
No, it is. And it's amazing. And hopefully, Tiger Woods can kind of bounce back from this bad outing that he had. And I think that's only going to make guys like Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson and all these other guys perform even better, knowing that they have the legend in Tiger Woods kind of creeping up behind them. So I think that's overall it's good for golf and good, obviously, for Brooks Koepka. Nick, do you care that Deontay Wilder knocked out Dominic Breazeale in the first round?
Yes, I do care about this, Jared. It's funny. I've been doing I do another podcast called The Ring Generals, and we talk about boxing and MMA and other stuff. And I've really started to enjoy the sport of boxing a lot more than I used to. I really didn't pay attention to it. And maybe that was because there wasn't as much star power. I didn't really like Floyd Mayweather as a star. But, man, this Deontay Wilder guy is really, really impressive and really becoming one of my favorite athletes in sports. Freak of nature, 6'7", 225 pounds, former football recruit, always from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, always wanted to play for the University of Alabama. And the only reason he didn't have a successful football career is because he had a young child or he had a child at a very young age that had some issues that he had to deal with, and he couldn't properly care for her if he was pursuing a football career. So he quit his dream of football, got into boxing, realized he had the hardest right hand possibly ever to be in the sport, and the man is, I think he's 41-0 with one draw against Tyson Fury that a lot of people remember, 40 knockouts. And it includes this one against Dominic Breazeale. Before this fight, he did say that he would not mind if Dominic Breazeale was the first man to ever, or one of the few men to die in the middle of the ring. So that did not come as a very good light. But then he almost did it on Saturday, legitimately, and knocked Breazeale out in the first 2 minutes. What this really means is that if you're a boxing fan, this kind of sets up Deontay Wilder to have a super fight, because it really does prove that he's so much better than a lot of his competition that he needs to fight an Anthony Joshua who's undefeated. He needs to have a rematch with Tyson Fury. So what this really means is, for sports fans and for boxing fans alike, Deontay Wilder's knockout of Dominic Breazeale means that we are going to have one of the best heavyweight fights of all time coming up in the next year. Boxing takes a while to set these things up, but I do think that I think the stars are now realizing it's inevitable. We have to fight each other. And Fury and Wilder did it in one of the most, it was one of the most entertaining fights I've ever seen, where Wilder knocked out Tyson Fury in the 12th round, and Fury got up and rose from the dead out of nowhere at the 7 count. So, I'm excited about that, and this knockout was fun to watch. Although I did want a little bit of a longer boxing match, because I had a couple drinks and stuff like that. was excited about a long, but whatever. Even more entertaining. They knocked him out in the first round. Jared, do you care that the University of Memphis has gotten the #1 college basketball recruit?
I do care, and they jumped Duke, who originally was the #1 overall recruiting team, and Memphis.
That's crazy.
Penny Hardaway, his first recruiting year, right? So good for them. I don't know how they did that, because Memphis, they had Derrick Rose, but really ever since him, I can't remember another great player really.
Was Mario Chalmers on that team, or was that Kansas?
I think that was Kansas. Mario Chalmers was Kansas. But Memphis, they get the #1 overall recruit in James Wiseman. They also get another 5-star forward in DJ Jeffries. And then they get a couple of local prospects who are 4-star guys in Malcolm Dandridge, and Damian Baugh. So Memphis kind of coming out of nowhere, right? Because in the last couple of years, it's been Duke, it's been Michigan State, it's been Gonzaga, those types of teams. But we haven't really heard from Memphis too much. So we'll see if this catapults them into a top contending team this year. Obviously, college basketball now is almost like a year-to-year basis, because these stars are all one and done. So Memphis will more than likely be a good, very, very good team this year, but we will see if this recruiting trail will continue for them in the years ahead. Nick, do you care that the Portland Trailblazers, after just getting swept by the Warriors, they've signed Terry Stotts to an extension?
No, I don't really care about this. The man obviously deserves an extension. There's no reason to give up on a great coach like Terry Stotts. I don't know exactly how many years it was. I don't think it was revealed yet, but I don't think they should be giving him an 8-year extension or anything like that, or a 6-year extension. But 2 or 3 more years to see if he can win a championship, I think is absolutely warranted, and I have no problem with it. They made it to the conference finals, whether you want to say they had an easier track or whatever. But like we're saying, they have 2 great players and a very solid core of bench players. They just kind of are 1 player away. It's not a reason to fire a coach. It's a reason to go get that 1 player, okay? Not everybody can have Steve Kerr, or Phil Jackson, or Pat Riley as a head coach. Sometimes you have to go and find players instead. And I think with this Portland team, like we were talking about, they need to go get and refine their roster before you're going to start blaming Terry Stotts, who has slowly and surely gotten them better and better every single year. So good for Terry Stotts, but I have no problem with this extension, and I don't really care. Jared, do you care that Tyreke Evans has been dismissed from the NBA for at least 2 years for a failed drug test.
I do, but I don't care. I do care because I honestly cannot remember the last time a player was dismissed from the NBA.
O.J. Mayo. That was the
Mayo?
last one I can remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, players, get suspended throughout all NFL, college, basketball, baseball. Players get suspended for drug use and all these other types of things, misconduct. But for a player to be dismissed, right, that means you have had to done something drastic and or had multiple suspensions already, like Tyreke has already had, and multiple failed drug tests. Like this is already his third failed drug test. So I don't understand how you can't get it right after failing the first one, and then you get another chance and you fail a second one, and you fail this third one, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? It's like you basically proven, after being a first-round draft pick of the Sacramento Kings, that you weren't worthy of that, and you've bounced around from team to team, and you've been a solid backup player, but, I don't understand how you continue to fail these drug tests, and I don't know what, drug or what he was taking that is obviously banned by the NBA. Yeah. So I don't know if the substance has been revealed yet.
What it is, it doesn't even matter as far as exactly what substance it is. To get banned from the NBA for this 2-year suspension like Mayo did, what this means is this is a hard drug. This is not marijuana.
It's not Adderall.
This is cocaine, heroin, meth.
Really?
Something along the lines of that. Codeine, something like that. It's not specifically, and I don't really think they probably will release that. But I think what they're saying is, this guy went too far with the drug test. We don't want any of that, and that's why it's the long 2-year ban.
Yeah, as he should. And you know what?
Yeah.
Because at this point, this isn't really about basketball. If what you're saying is actually true, this is about him getting his life straight and trying to figure out his potential drug problem in whatever it is. So for the NBA, I feel like this is a good kind of procedure and policy that they have in place. And if guys start to fail multiple drug tests, and if you're right, if it is a substance like cocaine or something that is obviously very dangerous, then yes, the player needs to get their life straight before they can go out and play basketball. Because if you think about it, you're on the road for 42 games in a season. That's a lot of different cities. And with these basketball players and with the limelight and the spotlight that they get, it is very easy for them and it's very accessible for them to get these types of drugs and stuff. So it's probably not a good thing for him to be, in the spotlight and in the limelight right now. He probably needs to chill and take a back seat for a minute to get himself together. Nick, last question for you. Do you care that Carter Stewart has stunned Major League Baseball? He's a 19-year-old draft pick, but he's decided to sign in Japan and play there for the foreseeable future.
Yes, I do care, because I haven't really heard of this before. This 19-year-old pitcher is going to Japan for 6 years on a contract that's worth $7 million. What he's essentially doing is he's saying no to college, and he's saying no to the minor leagues. He wants to go play professional baseball out of high school, and he has every right to do that under what the MLB's certain rules are. I believe that this also allows him to become an international free agent, which could make him more money off the top and could also get him on a major league roster quicker. Because a lot of those guys, your Yasiel Puigs, your Hyun-Jin Ryus, your Yu Darvishes, I'm sorry to mention all these Dodger guys, but it's just they tend to go right to the majors or soon after they sign, go to the majors within a year or so.
Shohei
Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani, very good example. Rather than a guy getting drafted at 18 years old out of high school and having to play in the minors for 3 or 4 years, like a Mike Trout or someone like that. Even Bryce Harper, it took him 2 years to get there and stuff like that. So I think for this kid, he's choosing what he wants. He's getting his money. He's going to have to go live in Japan. But if he wants to do that, that's fine. And he's signed to this contract for until at least he's 25 years old. So he's giving up some possible younger years for the MLB. And I don't know how these contracts work as far as if he can come to the MLB next year, stuff like that. He's circumventing rules. But this is something I've never heard of, so I have to be interested. I do care about this, and it should be interesting to see what all the baseball heads have to say about this. And we'll see if this is a trend. We've seen it in the NBA with Emmanuel Mudiay and other players, and I'm forgetting the guy that used to play for the Bucks, Brandon Jennings. He's actually from around here.
Right.
He did it too, where they go to circumvent the. I don't want to go to college, risk my career. I'd rather be making money. And at least if I tear my ACL, at least I'm making $600,000 a year, right, or $1 million a year. So, very interesting there. And it should be interesting to see what happens with that whole scenario. All right, we're gonna get a break. We're gonna come back talking the NFL and the Stanley Cup Finals, because we now know the participants in that game. So we will be right back here on the Cover 2 podcast on the TuneIn Radio app, OC Rock Radio, and Facebook Live.
That'll do it. The Boston Bruins will play for the Stanley Cup.
They've waited 49 years, and the St. Louis Blues are going to the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah. Okay, so interesting enough, the Blues were actually one of those teams that's done it before.
Oh.
And they lost to the Canadiens in that finals. Isn't that crazy? So the only other team to come from the bottom of the standings, not necessarily last place, was the Canadiens. So a little interesting. So
Okay.
yes, so some history on the line for both these
Right.
things, not just competitively.
I know that I took some heat, and deservedly so, for some of the comments that I've made on that show, and especially towards him. And I genuinely feel bad about that, and I'm sorry. Did I go too far after that Denver game? Probably.
Brown went beyond probably. He took that comment as a personal slap and aired it out on LeBron James' show for HBO.
Oh yeah, the good dude called me out. We lose a game. He like, damn, AB should have ran the better route.
Why would Ben do that?
That's the type of guy he is.
Cover 2 podcast coming back on air for our final segment of the show, and we're jumping into the NFL. Even though it is the off season, organized team activities have started for every single team. So players are on the field, rookies and veterans, even though there's not really any contact going on.
Yes.
Guys are practicing, and this is one of the first steps before we get to training camp and we actually get to some real football. So we're going to finish off the segment with the Stanley Cup Final now that we know which teams will be in the Stanley Cup, but we want to take this first 10 to 15 minutes and talk about the NFL. So, of course, the Dallas Cowboys seem to always be in the headlines for one reason or another. And this time, it's not necessarily a good headline, even though as a resident Cowboy fan here, I'm going to say it's not that big of a deal. Ezekiel Elliott, who is one of the undoubted leaders of this Cowboys team now, who is, whether he likes it or not, has had to take on that role, especially with certain players like Tony Romo and Jason Witten, who is now back now, but last year was not on this team. So Dak Prescott, those guys, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, some of the younger guys on this team have had to take more of a leadership role, and that includes Ezekiel Elliott. But this past Saturday, he was at a concert type venue in Vegas, and there was an incident where he kind of like pushed over, or not, I don't want to say ran over, but he had an incident with a security guard, and that security guard fell, and Zeke was then handcuffed. He was not arrested, and that security guard is not pressing charges, but there is a TMZ video that was released of the incident, and it didn't necessarily. Zeke just kind of there was some type of confrontation. Words were exchanged, and from what I saw from the video, Zeke gets up in the security guard's face, and obviously Zeke's a lot bigger than this guy.
Huge, yeah.
And he's literally touching him, and the security guard kind of like, it looks like he falls over. He goes out of the picture, right? And then Zeke is kind of being grabbed by one of his friends or girlfriend or someone to kind of get out of the situation and move away. Yeah. Well, then the cops come and handcuff him. But like I said, he was not arrested. There are no charges being pressed on him. And per Adam Schefter, the NFL insider for ESPN, is saying that the NFL does not think that this is that big of a deal. So, in that light, that is good news, because the last thing the Cowboys need is for Zeke to be suspended again.
Yeah,
right?
That would be
and Zeke was he flew back to Dallas the next day, and he was there for one of his Cowboys camps. So, almost as if like nothing happened. But obviously in today's world where everyone has a cell phone, that was easily captured. So, Nick, what do you think about this situation? This also in light of the fact that even though Ezekiel Elliott's fifth-year option was granted by the Cowboys, so he's technically on the Cowboys' books for another 2 years.
Yeah.
Eventually, he will need a new contract. Do you think that this will hurt his contract? Not really a big deal.
No, I don't think this is a big deal. I think he'll get that extension. He deserves it. He's one of the reasons the Cowboys are one of the top teams in the NFL, or at least the NFC, in my opinion. And I don't think an incident where he doesn't even get charged with anything or gets handcuffed, especially since, I work at a concert venue, and that stuff happens literally every single concert I'm at. So it's not, obviously it's different when there's a star and a famous person doing it, and especially if a security guard gets assaulted or pushed to the ground, there is a different significance to that. But I do honestly think that this will not affect his contract issue, and I just think if the Cowboys are smart, you're not going to put, you got in an argument and an altercation with the security guard at a concert, so we're not extending you. I think most people would think that's a bad idea for the Cowboys to do, and it would hurt their franchise. So no, I don't think they should. This will affect, contract negotiations or anything like that. But I think Zeke maybe needs to not be, rent. I know he doesn't have an extension yet, but Zeke, rent out some bungalow or something like that. Rent out a box, something like that. Don't be getting in altercations with security guards. There's no reason to do that. You don't need to be a common person at these concerts. You've gotten into too many altercations in your past. He needs to stay low, and even when he goes to these events, he needs to be protected and needs to do things the right way and not be amongst people that might want to get to him or might want to cause something. Because in our culture today, we seem to be more enthralled with trying to get that social media video or something like that, or try to get people in trouble. Well, I got the scoop on that. No, that's not the way it should be, but Zeke, it is the way it is, so Zeke needs to protect himself. So I do think he needs to be smarter and needs to stop getting in these altercations, but I don't think it will hurt contract extensions, though.
No, it should not.
No. And then so you mentioned something to me in text about Amari Cooper's contract extension talks. What is this? I don't know much about this.
Yeah, so, along with the Cowboys and trying to get Ezekiel Elliott signed long-term, like I mentioned, first-round draft picks in the NFL, their contracts are for 4 years, but they also have an extra fifth-year option that the team can choose to exercise or not exercise, depending on if the player is good enough to warrant that. Ezekiel Elliott obviously has shown that he's a superstar in this league, one of the best running backs in the league, and so the Cowboys did grant that fifth-year option, which means that they technically get 1 extra year of his services without having to give him a contract extension right away. The fact that the Cowboys still have Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, Byron Jones, who need long-term extensions, I think, unfortunately, this just pushes Zeke even further down the totem pole as far as getting that extension done right now.
Yeah.
For Amari Cooper, there are some reports out there, and like Nick said earlier in the show, we don't necessarily like to talk about rumors on this show, but the rumor is that the Cowboys and Amari Cooper's camp are not really close on a contract negotiation, and Cooper was asked about his thoughts on whether he is frustrated or anything, and he basically said no. The Cowboys traded a first-round pick for me for a reason. I know that I'm going to be here, and eventually this contract will get done. I think the reason why there's maybe some stalls in this contract is because not only is Amari Cooper looking for a new contract, but so is Julio Jones and a few other elite receivers in the NFL.
Yeah.
Guess what? You don't necessarily want to be the first guy to get your contract, because then you know that the other guy, that's just setting the bar, that's setting the market. You know that if Amari Cooper goes first, then Julio Jones is going to say, okay, this is what he got. I want $2 million more. So you don't necessarily want to be the first guinea pig to, set that bar. You want someone else to do it. That way, you guys, your camp can go to the organization and say, this is what this person did. I want a little bit more. So I think that's where the stalls are. Eventually, someone will have to break the ice. But I don't think it's a issue. And I think eventually the Cowboys will get Amari Cooper, as well as Dak Prescott, as well as Byron Jones, and eventually Ezekiel Elliott under contract long term.
Yeah, very interesting stuff right there. I think the Cowboys have a very interesting next couple off seasons, but it seems like their players are down to play for the Cowboys. Like, you're not seeing the stuff that's happened with the Steelers, and we're going to tie that in a second, but you're not seeing these guys go, I don't know if I want to, all this. There's no disrespect to these players in the Cowboys. They just seem to, they know the contract extensions are coming up. They know, Zeke knows Dak and Cooper are getting one. Cooper knows Dak and Zeke, all that stuff. And they are all just kind of waiting. They all want to get their money, and they all deserve their money, but I think they all understand that to be successful, you can't go, I want $40 million right now, and I don't care about what the quarterback gets. Right? No, you need to be a team player and maybe take a tiny bit of a pay cut, potentially, to get all these guys signed up. I'm not saying they need it, but what I'm saying is a pay cut, or at least wait it out and do it the way the team wants to do it.
Right.
You're going to get your money, but also I think if you're a smart player and you want to win a championship, you also if you see two other guys sign giant extensions. Maybe if you're the third guy, you go, okay, I'll take $5 million less this year, and then we'll figure it out. Maybe we can figure out my contract later and stuff like that. But interesting stuff. I still think the Cowboys. We're going to do our predictions for the NFL season a lot longer, but I do think the Cowboys are really, they're set to. They're like, they really got some good things come to them. Which I would not have thought of like 2 years ago too. So very, very interesting. Draymond, Cowboys. I'm starting to. When they play the Cardinals, don't get me wrong, I'm going to cheer to lose them. Have them lose by 52.
Okay.
52. But for now, when they're in a year where the Cardinals are a little down, I think the Cowboys will have a good year next year, barring major injury. All right, so let's move on. We talked about the Steelers. Obviously, Antonio Brown was traded to the Oakland Raiders, and Le'Veon Bell left the team. But we're going to talk about AB. And Jared was explaining to me earlier that Big Ben apologized for what he said about AB after the Denver Broncos game, how he kind of blamed Antonio Brown for some of the reasons that the Steelers had an unsuccessful season last year and lost certain games. My take on this whole Big Ben AB saga is, why is Big Ben even talking about AB anymore? They're not on the same team. It's almost like Ben is trying to soften the blow of people blaming him for stuff. I don't know, but just why? Like, AB obviously is not. He doesn't like you, okay? He doesn't like the Steelers organization, and he comes from an area in Miami where there's not, like, you don't just forgive everyone for their sins, especially if they're talking about you in the public, and it's one of the reasons that you didn't get, like, it's just, I don't expect AB to accept the apology. He didn't accept the apology, so Big Ben just needs to leave it alone. Why are Steelers talking about Raiders players? I know they were former teammates, but they just need to leave it alone. Big Ben needs to focus on the Steelers season this year and just tell the media, hey, I'm not answering any more questions about Antonio Brown. He's not on my team anymore. He asked for a trade. He quit on us the last game. I don't want to talk about him. That's my thoughts. Do you kind of agree with me on that? Do you think, or what is this? What does this mean? What does all this mean?
I don't know what it means, because why is Big Ben coming out and saying this now?
Exactly.
Like, why? If you were to say anything, and he has his own weekly radio show in Pittsburgh, and Big Ben has already come out and said that he's not a huge fan of the media and or social media because how they portray things. So why are you now going out and talking to the media and trying to speak to Antonio Brown through the media? It's kind of contradictory, and it doesn't really make sense. If Big Ben wanted to come out and say something, he should have done it either before Antonio Brown was traded or maybe right after, or something. Like, it's like teams are in organized team activities right now, right? And it's about focusing on your team. Why are you trying to bring up something that happened months ago, right? If you're Antonio Brown, I'm not surprised that he responded on Twitter because that's just him. But if I were him, it's like, you're in Oakland now, right? So you don't have to talk to Big Ben ever again. and or tweet at him, or so I just wouldn't even respond, right? I wouldn't say anything. You're right. Antonio Brown obviously does not like Big Ben, and he has a problem not only with him but with the organization. And guess what? He got himself out of that problem. He has a new contract with new guaranteed money. He's at a fresh start with a new head coach, new quarterback, all of that stuff. Focus on your team, and I think both sides just need to go their separate ways, right? So,
exactly. I completely agree.
Big Ben, in the offseason, there was pictures of him at his lake house in Georgia where he took some of his teammates out and tried to have a little team bonding thing. And I'm not saying that he hasn't done that before, but it's kind of interesting that that was publicized with everything that happened this offseason with losing Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell leaving. For this team to now trying to be bonding together is a little interesting, right? Exactly. And
no,
we'll see how that works out. But I guarantee you, this Steelers team losing Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell will not be as good as they were in years past.
No, this is not going to be like the Warriors where they lose their best players and then they are still good. No, the Steelers will be competing with the Browns and the Ravens for the playoffs next year. And I'm not necessarily going to say that they're going to be at the top or even in the second best team in that division. So, very interesting stuff coming out of Pittsburgh, but it just again, why are Steelers players talking about I know they're
over. Move on.
Yeah, you traded him for nothing, didn't even get much back for him. So deal with your own team. Focus. Talk about Juju Smith. Talk about your new draft picks. Don't be talking about AB. Who cares? Especially when he brought it up himself, kind of too. It doesn't make no sense. All right, last NFL. Well, okay, I did want to mention Julian Edelman signs a 2-year extension with New England Patriots.
Well deserved.
We both probably think this is just a smart move, and this just was meant to happen. And I think as long as Tom Brady's still there, most of these players probably will start coming.
Shout out to Edelman as well for going back and getting his degree.
Yeah,
finally graduating.
Said
he made a promise to his parents that he would eventually go back and get that. So you see a lot of former athletes, or not former, current athletes even. In their off seasons, going back to school and taking classes. Larry Fitzgerald did it.
Josh Rosen.
I believe Shaq did it at one point. There's a lot of guys. Jalen Smith for the Dallas Cowboys did it this offseason as well. Just graduated from Notre Dame. So, congrats to Edelman for not only getting that contract extension, but finally earning his degree.
Yeah, what's his name? Jalen Smith. Because he was dealing with so many injuries at Notre Dame. It's a wonder how he didn't get so behind in school, right? When that's people don't think about that a lot.
Right.
A guy has 2 horrible injuries in college. They're not necessarily sitting there hoping to get their schoolwork done at the same time, right? They're trying to, in Jalen Smith's case, he thought his NFL career might be over, but now that dude is one of the scariest dudes in the whole league. All right, so there was one more thing I wanted to. Oh yeah, okay. So we need to jump into Buccaneers released Gerald McCoy. Sign Ndamukong Suh. Was this a good decision for them, or do you think they're giving up on a better player for a worse?
So I'm not necessarily saying Ndamukong Suh. I feel like he can still play, and if it's at the right price point, then I think he can be very valuable to your team. I'm actually surprised that the Rams did not try to re-sign him at some point, even if it was for a 1-year or 2-year deal.
He didn't play up to the standard that I think they wanted him to.
He did not, but still, if you pair him with Aaron Donald, right? Suh isn't the player that he used to be, but if you can put him next to a superstar, I think it'll make him look better, right? Yeah. So now he goes from a Super Bowl contending team to a Buccaneers team that's in a complete rebuild and probably won't make the playoffs this year. So from his standpoint, I don't really understand why he would go from the Rams to the Bucks. Maybe the Bucks offered him more money. We're not totally sure on the financials yet.
Yeah,
but as far as the Bucks letting Gerald McCoy go, this was interesting because he was going to be like a $13 million cap hit towards the Bucks' salary this year. And obviously, the Bucks felt that his play on the field was not up to that. The last 6 or 7 games of the season, he did not record a sack. And he had only had, I believe, 6 sacks on the entire season. So there was, rumors there that the Bucks wanted to renegotiate his contract. Gerald McCoy did not want to, and at the end of the day, his 9-year tenure with the Bucks comes to an end. Funny enough, Gerald McCoy and Ndamukong Suh were drafted back to back in the same year. So one player leaves, another enters. And now Gerald McCoy is free to sign anywhere he likes.
Yeah, technically you don't lose much in that case. And so the teams, I'm seeing there linked to him are the Browns, Patriots, Colts, Chargers, and Saints.
Okay. The Patriots, I feel like always, just because they always take on the veteran guys, and you can kind of, Bill Belichick will always get something out of him. I think Cleveland is there just because of all the hype with Cleveland now. I will say one thing.
I don't think Cleveland will get him.
I will say one thing about a lot of teams will probably want to sign him, but because the Bucks released him, the Bucks are still going to have to pay the majority of his guaranteed money. So he's still going to get paid regardless of if he plays this season or not. Other teams know that, so they will probably come in with somewhat of a low-ball offer, and it's not like they're going to be wanting to give him $15 million a year. So we'll see if Gerald McCoy is willing to take less money to go play for another team, knowing that he's still getting paid for the Buccaneers. An interesting thing to watch out for.
No, absolutely, and I'm sure we'll talk about it next week or 2 weeks from now when McCoy signs to somebody. But yeah, a couple of big-time players, involved in free agent talks this late again. It's weird that we're talking about the NFL, but there's so much to talk about. We kind of had to. So I think that it's very interesting. And McCoy's a great player, but he is nearing. He's not really in his prime anymore. So I do think he's been on the Buccaneers, hasn't been able to win a title. Might as well go to somewhere where you can win a title. You've earned the right. The Buccaneers haven't surrounded you with anything. It's not his fault. So that guy's been a freak of nature for a long time now. Because I've seen him play live twice, and he was always that guy. You saw he always had a sack. Always had a bunch of that. Yeah,
huge.
Always had a bunch of titles and stuff like that. So, all right, moving on to our last topic. I wanted to mention Bobby Wagner, but we're not going to. I'll mention it at the end if we have time. We have about 5-6 minutes left. We want to predict the Stanley Cup Finals now. The St. Louis Blues taking on the Boston Bruins. Bruins have home field advantage in this series. Home ice. Excuse me, they don't play on field. They play on blocks of ice. I don't know why I said that. Interesting tidbits from this series. The Blues, once again, were in last place at one point in this season.
Wow.
And there's only been 4 other teams that have come from the bottom of the standings to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Blues, actually, interestingly enough, were one of those teams. And in the same year they did that, they played another team that did that and lost to the Montreal Canadiens in the Stanley Cup Finals. So a little weird history there, that one of the few times a team has done this, it was the Blues, and they actually lost the Stanley Cup Finals to another team that did it. So Very interesting fact right there. Other interesting tidbit that you brought up. This would be the first time since 1935, you heard that correctly, that a city would have 3 championships in one kind of calendar year if the Bruins were to win the Stanley Cup, because, of course, the Red Sox and New England Patriots won their respective championships in their sports. The Celtics could not get it done, which we were both happy about, as you are wearing a Magic Johnson jersey on the podcast today. Also, first time in the Stanley Cup Finals since 1970 for the St. Louis Blues. They've never won a title.
Wow.
So a couple interesting things there. None of that stuff has anything to do with this current series, but Jared, real quick, we only have about 4 minutes left. What do you think will happen in the series? Who do you think is going to grab the best trophy in sports?
Well, right now, even though I would say the Bruins are probably favored, I actually am pulling for the Blues because of those things those stats and things that you just mentioned. The fact that they've never won a championship. Their last appearance was in 1970. And the fact that I think they have momentum riding with them right now. The Bruins will be off for a total of 10 days before they actually play. And I was just reading that they're going to have some scrimmages to try to keep a simulation game-type scrimmage to try to stay fresh. But still, at the end of the day, obviously I've never played hockey, but just from playing football and basketball, it's tough to have that game-type simulation.
That's so many days
10 days
off.
of rest is great, especially in such a physical sport as hockey. But I think for the Blues, who, like I said, have that momentum, and they, can kind of come into this series with that momentum, I think they will have the early edge, to whereas the Bruins have been kind of resting and relaxing, and who knows, if this series goes 7, maybe that will then favor the Bruins because they've had that rest.
And I believe the Blues have played one under the minimum. They played 2 Game 7s and now Game 6. So they've gone very deep in this playoff. So you're right. If the deeper the series goes, the more chance the Bruins probably end up winning it.
Yeah, but I'm pulling for the Blues because they have never won. And because I'm honestly just tired of seeing Boston teams win championships.
Yeah, that's very true.
It would be really, really cool, for the Red Sox, Patriots, and Boston to do it because it hasn't been done since 1935, and it would only be the second time. It was the Detroit teams in Detroit, the Red Wings, the Lions, and the Tigers who had won in 1935. So from that standpoint, it would be very cool. But I'm going with the Blues. I want to see a new team range.
Games? How many games?
The Bruins have home ice.
Home ice,
right? I think it goes at least 6.
Okay.
Because I think the Blues steal a game on the road, and then I think it ends up going 6. But I'm gonna say the Blues.
Okay.
The Blues.
Interesting. So
probably the underdog pick, but
I'm gonna go with the Bruins in this series. I do think that the Blues will grab Game 1 because I think that momentum factor. But I just think Tuukka Rask is such an amazing goalie, and he's healthy this year, and he's been unbelievable. I am always going to go with who has the best goalie. In the years the Kings won it, it was Jonathan Quick was unbelievable.
Defense wins
Henrik
championships.
Lundqvist brought the Rangers deep in the playoffs a couple of years. Pecorino has done it with Nashville for a bunch. So I'm going to go with Tuukka Rask. I think they win it in 6. I think Blues grab Game 1, Bruins grab Games 2 and 3. St. Louis wins Game 4, and then Bruins win out and win the Stanley Cup. The first Stanley Cup since 2013 when they beat Vancouver and had like 1,000 fights in that series. So, I don't want Boston to win because, again, they've won a bunch, and I know literally that those fans they plan for parades. I'm not even kidding. They do. They expect them.
It's ridiculous.
And they plan them. So, but I'm not going to go against a good goalie. I want St. Louis to win. Like I said, they've never won, and we don't, necessarily need another Boston team winning. But I'm going to go with the Bruins in 6. And, it should be a good final, though. Yeah, I know the Blues will go hard, and it would be amazing if they could win the Stanley Cup and become only the second team to win it after being one of the worst teams in the NHL earlier that year. All right, if you're listening on OC Rock Radio and the TuneIn Radio app, you are hearing Enter Sandman play. That means it is the end of the podcast. If you were watching on Facebook Live, you're just hearing our voices still. But great podcast today, Jared. We don't often, in the middle of May, get this power-packed of a show. I think we covered as much as possible, and hopefully the Lakers can figure out what's going on with them. Yeah.
I still rep my team no matter what.
Exactly. Shout out to the Lakers. Fix your stuff. Sell your team. Boss Family Trust. Sell the team, please. But it's the end of the podcast. It'll be on YouTube later, obviously, if you're watching on Facebook Live. But for Nick Nina,
I'm Jared Smith.
This has been the Cover 2 podcast.